You know, everybody knows Chief Green Airport, but how the whole business operates, we don't know much about it. Welcome into My State of Mind. I am Dan York. This is a program tonight that we will forego our rundown where we hit the daily news cycle and make commentary because some are off for, take a little break, or sometimes we just kind of want to spread it out a little bit. And after a previous program fairly recently with the boss of TF Green Airport, I thought, you know what, there's a lot about this industry that people just do not understand and would be interested to learn, and so that is what we shall do. Kelly Fredericks is my guest this evening for the entire portion of the broadcast. You know, I figure I'd start with the tough stuff first. You know, people complain a lot about the noise. They worry about the expansion. A recent Eyewitness News summary on the latest there starts off the conversation.
Many homes were acquired by the airport corporation and demolished to make room for the project. Residents on the outskirts of those newly empty lots wonder what will happen to them.
I can't at this point make any plans. I can't give anybody any idea when I'm going to be out of here or when they're going to take it.
Avedisian told me next year the airport will offer to buy more homes because of the noise. Lori Staten hopes they offer her. It's just too noisy.
We're hearing one of those planes right now.
Exactly. I don't think you can hear me, so I'll stop talking.
But still, she told me seeing her neighbors' homes demolished is emotional.
All the kids say it. The memories of their childhood is gone.
Ultimately, when the project is finished, Avedisian says most will be happy.
Overall, this is going to be a big win for everybody. And with the train station on board and the development of City Center Warwick, there's a lot happening in and around TF Green Airport.
Obviously, Steve's references there to Avedisian, Mayor Avedisian. Kelly, welcome to the broadcast. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
After our previous program, it only reminded me that there's just so much about this really interesting business that we really don't know. So we'll just talk industry stuff and like. I will tell you, and I mentioned this in our last show, hearing that airplane noise to me is good memories because I'd be going to Shea Stadium and listening to the planes come over. And when I was in Scotland this past summer, I was kind of intrigued over the idea that some of these incredible golf courses that you only dream about playing also bring with them, and you've watched the British Open, the planes are coming right over. However, I guess if I lived underneath it all day long, it would be a whole other story. So what is the situation with folks at Warwick, and who's getting acquired, and how's that whole thing going to roll out?
Well, we've actually got a voluntary and a mandatory noise acquisition or noise program. We can mitigate some of the noise issues through a residential sound insulation program. But the Federal Aviation Administration, which is the regulatory body that we have to abide by, identifies noise contours. And if you're within certain thresholds, it's not the airport determining who's eligible, who's not. There's really almost a mathematical calculation done with noise monitoring to determine if you fall within those certain thresholds. And if you fall within some, you may be eligible for insulation or residential sound insulation program. You may be eligible for acquisition. And it could be mandatory or it could be discretionary, at that point in time. But,
so how many folks in that neighborhood are accessing those programs?
I want to say that in history of RIAC, I believe that we have addressed either through easements or sound insulation, I believe in excess of 1,000 over the history. Over a multi-decade program. But currently, I believe that in the current program, we could have upwards, and this is if everyone took advantage of the program, I believe it's in excess of 500 homes. In the current program. But I think it's, we totally we understand. As a pilot, I probably am not bothered by the aircraft noise as much as some folks, but we get it. And we're trying to, if it falls within the parameters of the FAA's criteria from an eligibility perspective, we want to do everything and anything we can. And we're trying to be good neighbors.
All right, we'll talk about the expansion in a second, but tell everybody about you. We've got some time to do that. You're only here a year or so, and you come up from Florida. Tell us about your experience in the business and your professional flying experience and all that.
I'm actually a recovering engineer, a professional engineer by trade, and I actually was overseeing a multi-billion-dollar expansion program at Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport before I was fortunate enough to get the position as president and CEO at RIAC. But I've been one of those people that, even a blind pig finds an acorn. I've found a number of them in my career. I've had the opportunity to be an airport president, chief operating officer at Pittsburgh International Airport when we were in our heyday. have spent a lot of time in the consultant community, and also spent a lot of time on the highway side of things, in the roadway bridges. Along the way, I was able to get a pilot's license, and I've just been really, really fortunate to just blessed with working with some great folks throughout my career, and that's absolutely no different. Best group of folks is right here at TF Green.
Do you fly a lot?
Not nearly as much as I'd like to. Most of my flying now is either for business, and I fly commercially, or we do have, TF Green has a helicopter, and we get around to our other. We do have 5 other airports. Myself, not a whole lot, no. I'm not current, regretfully. I hope to do that, get back to being current again in the not too distant future.
Speaking of Pittsburgh Airport, my recollection in the few times that I've flown in and out of Pittsburgh is that's one of the toughest airports for a pilot to navigate sometimes, correct? Isn't that runway a little tough coming over the hill in Pittsburgh?
You know, I'd have to, I hate to ever disagree with the host, Dan.
Is that maybe it's a bad rumor?
It is a bad rumor.
Well, obviously you're not going to have an unsafe runway at a major airport, but there is kind of like a, whoa, there it is type of thing, isn't there?
I think you have the wrong Pittsburgh.
All right, well, that's the end of the show. Thanks for watching. That's the end of the show. Thanks for watching.
having me.
Get the right camera. I dated a girl in Pittsburgh who said that everyone freaks out that the airport, that the runway was rumored to be one of the more provocative airports. I mean, runways. Oh, screw it. You know, that's, anyway, you know, really? There's nothing about
How did that
Pittsburgh
relationship
Airport?
work out? I'm sorry to hear
My wife of 24 years is very happy that it didn't. And so
Good for you.
All right, well, let's leave it there. When we come back, what camera am I on, Judge? I don't even know where. When we come back, we'll get back on track and talk about the expansion, the future of the business, and how the industry really works. Stay with us. Just some scenes from TF Green Airport. Actually, Kelly and I are just going to sit here and talk about that girl in Pittsburgh that broke up with me, and we'll. You sure that? I'm not going there. Funny stuff. Kelly Fredericks is here. He's the president and CEO of the Airport Corporation. He's the boss over there where all the planes are in Warwick. We've had some headlines recently that show that traffic is down. We talked about that in some detail in our last broadcast. Here's some of the graphics that the airport has actually provided, and it shows that the service has kind of reoriented itself toward a more East Coast flavor, right?
That is correct. Yeah, yeah.
And then there's some nonstop destination changes that have occurred. So we have a little less non-stoppage, which of course as a passenger, I guess most of us would rather fly nonstop.
Absolutely.
Unless you're a masochist. You move to the next item, and we've got another interesting graphic about the number of passengers, which has fallen off a little bit. You've got an answer for that, and it's got a lot more to do with the industry, perhaps, than just Rhode Island, that's for sure. And something else here that I think is kind of interesting. The number of daily departures ends up being down, and the seats availability is down, which makes sense to me based on your conversation last time around, which is that you don't want a lot of seat availability in the airport or the airline industry. So if seat availability is down, that means seats are taken, less planes make sense, right? That's how it works.
Yeah, and to put it a little bit of a different context, Dan, from a standpoint, in 2005, when we were at our peak at 5.7 million passengers, we had 11,225. We did a week-to-week comparison, first week in November, 2005 versus 2014. 11,225 daily departing seats. So there's 22,500 total. Currently, in 2014, we had about 6,100. That's a dramatic decrease. The difference being that back in 2005, planes were flying on average between 60 and 70%. Today, it's 90% full. We don't have available seats to sell, and that's one of the things that we're really grinding it out now and trying to get our air carriers to introduce more seats into our market, which we believe we can fill.
You know, it's kind of a funny thing, because I remember I did more flying earlier in the 2000s than I do now, just simply because of stuff. And I used to actually enjoy the idea that more or less, the planes were going to be half full.
Absolutely.
And it was a little bit more relaxing. It's kind of like going to a stadium thinking, you know what, I'll be able to throw my jacket down, put a couple beers over here, put my feet up, that kind of thing. But actually, you want to go to a full stadium where the competition is high and there's a lot at stake and there's a lot of atmosphere. So too, if you're thinking about the big picture economically in the state, you want to be in airplanes that are very full because it means business is good, right?
It does. It does. Yeah. It does. And also from a standpoint, we have identified, and so much of what we do from an air service development perspective must remain confidential because we're competing with other airports, and our respective air carriers, they're competing amongst each other for this service. So just because we may have a business plan for something that makes great sense for TF Green, we've still got to stack that up against perhaps 15 to 25 other airports that have equal business plans. So there's an awful lot of strategy that goes into it. And I always tell folks, there's no airline store. You just don't go out there and say, people ask me all the time, why don't we just have this nonstop service to Paducah, Kentucky? Well, it doesn't work that way. Also, not from a threatening perspective, but we continually try to educate that aviation, certainly air service, is very much a use it or lose it proposition. The more seats that we get introduced to our market, we've got to fill those, or if not, the air carriers are going to retract. So I think we're in a good spot.
So help me with this, because I think this is fascinating. Are you marketing the airport to airlines? Obviously, we almost have the number of carriers that we have in the place, right? Since the old days.
No, actually, we had back in 2005, we had 11 different air carriers servicing TF Green.
And we have now
6.
Right, that's what I mean. So we've halved it.
Halved. I'm sorry,
50%.
halved. Yes, absolutely.
So when you're looking at long-range planning and the competitive business model for the airport corporation, are you selling airlines the location benefits? Are they coming to you because they just need it to be a hub, a pit stop, or whatever? What's the yin and the yang that goes along with building airport business?
First and foremost, there's got to be defendable economics. They want to know, if we add these, how are you going to fill those seats? Is it a profitable market? And again, their definite profitability may be a little bit different than ours because they're comparing it against some other airports, which we're not. Right. So it's got to pass the economic muster. They also look at the state in general from a standpoint of what's our economic outlook. I mean, that does play into it. Our
we'll
jobs
get to that.
rise.
But help me with this. Who asks who to the dance more? The airport asking the airlines to consider its location, or the airlines asking the airport for accommodation?
My belief, it is way more the airports courting the air carriers.
Really?
Absolutely, yeah. And in the old days when everybody was flying fat, dumb, and happy, so to speak, and planes were half full, there wasn't a lot of detail that went into it. In today's day and age, and given the competitive nature of it, again, you've got to do that business analysis, and you've got to go out and pitch it. It's not only the message that you're delivering, but when you deliver it. So we're being extremely aggressive in our meetings with the corporate office, but again, you've got to have a defendable pitch. And we've got to do, a decade ago or a decade and a half ago, they were in the back office seeing how much money they can make off of TF Green. Today, we've got to do that work for them and then present them with that plan.
Interesting. Okay, so that answers one kind of ebb and flow question. And now with the expansion due to be completed in December of 2017,
right,
you have an idea of how many airlines might want to be interested because of the larger opportunity, bigger planes? You have deals pending? You just have a game plan to execute once it's finished? How does that whole thing work?
Well, it's all of the above. We've got a strategic plan. We've literally got a confidential document for each one of our incumbent carriers serving us today, our prospective carriers, then we have some long-range targets, and within those, we've got specific, here's the first priority we want, here's the second priority we want, here's the third priority, and we're literally going down through those, backing it up with a sound business plan, and approaching the air carriers and try to sell all of those types of things, as well as future West Coast service.
With the corporation, the airport corporation being a quasi-government, what's your goal? What's your goal? What is it? A profit goal? Is it a gross revenue goal? What do you wake up in the morning thinking? All right, what am I trying to achieve today?
Well, two things in a big picture perspective. Number one, pure and simple, we want to connect Rhode Island with the world. Secondly, we want to optimize the economic impact of our facility. We want to provide as many destinations. We want to provide as many available seats to our travelers. We want to see our numbers grow. We want to see the economic output of our facility. All of those types of things, and a safe and secure facility. But we are, from a greedy perspective, we want to make as much money as possible because we're mandated to reinvest it back into our facilities.
Who comes up with, who applies the most pressure to the growth of the airport? Yourselves as the corporation, the customers that you hear from all the time, the airlines, or the political class that's always promising economic growth?
Well, I think from again, I hate to say, and I hate to sound like I'm on a political fence here, but it's all of the above. Again, it's got to be a partnership. The most valuable stakeholder that any airport is going to have, any successful airport, is the business community, followed closely by its elected officials, and we can't lose sight of the fact of our customers. So we've got to weigh all of those things, and again, our strategy, our strategic plan for development going forward includes all of those elements of growth.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk about where Green sits with its competitors and maybe a couple things you still don't know about the business. Fascinating. I find it fascinating. Stay with us. That was always, it's always a big moment when POTUS arrives. Air Force One, it's not just, I think a lot of people say, how does he come here? We don't have a big enough runway. But there are different size Air Force Ones.
There is. Whatever aircraft he's flying in becomes Air Force One.
Yeah.
And when he's been to Green the last 2 times this year, he's been in the 757.
Right.
But it's always impressive to have him.
Pretty cool stuff.
It's very, very cool. It's a lot of work by a lot of agencies, including our folks. But it's really an honor to have him.
What's their front time? I mean, how much their prep time? I mean, where they're combing the place out big time security wise.
They're in town days before. The planning is amazing. And again, it's not only from the federal perspective, but locally as well. The coordination amongst the agencies is absolutely amazing. And then, there's an awful lot of the stuff that goes along, all of the equipment that's brought in, and must be, sent out afterwards. So, once he leaves, there's still an awful lot of work to do. But there's an awful lot of advanced stuff and post stuff that goes on.
And talk to me about your experience at Fort Lauderdale, Pittsburgh, with that funky runway. This airport, where does Green sit in terms of, when all you industry guys, get together for your annual seminar or whatever? Mm-hmm. Oh, you're at Green. Oh, you're at Fort Lauderdale. Oh, where is it?
Well, we're in what's known as a medium hub, and that's based on the number of passengers we serve. So you've got the LAXs, the Boston Logans, the LaGuardias, the big ones, and there's about 25 to 30 of those. The next tier is the medium hubs, and TF Green is a medium hub. We compare with a Pittsburgh, a Bradley, that size, Raleigh-Durham, that type of thing.
Well, this is like a duh question and an answer, but just in terms of esteem, I'm guessing that we've come a long way here in Rhode Island with our airport reputation, correct?
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Is it running ahead or behind of the state's reputation? Because the state is suffering right now from a constant conversation about economic malaise and a new governor, and there's always a bright feeling about the future when the administrations change and the like. But not being here for very long, do you reflect on what I'm sure you see is a lot of grinding and woe is me about how we're doing versus how the airport is doing? Thought?
I think it's a combination from a standpoint. There's reason for optimism. I'll tell anybody, I wouldn't be here if I didn't think our best days weren't ahead of us. I mean, I think that we, from a passenger perspective, bottomed out. I think there's enormous opportunity, and I think the same way for the state. I think it goes hand in hand. So I think there should be a sense of optimism, and comparatively, I think that Rhode Island, by and large, from an airport perspective, any airport I've been at, and a number of them, we have such a competitive advantage. The access that we have to our elected officials at all levels, the access to the senior decision makers in our business community is unprecedented. I think that we have the ability to act and react so much quicker than other places.
When you're having that dynamic conversation with our political leadership, all trying to allegedly do what's right for everybody and grow the state, are you active or reactive with them? In other words, are you brainstorming with them about what the place ought to do aside from the airport business, or just reacting to what you project the trends to be and then selling that to the airlines?
Obviously, our elected officials at all levels are very, very close allies. So I would like to think that collectively we're being proactive. You know, we have maybe self-serving from a perspective, but we have our strategy, our initiatives, our development plans for the airport, and we try to interact with
But
the
they've
elected
got
officials.
your development has got to track the state's development.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes. Oh no, it does.
I mean, you got to be very keen to be able to measure whether we're getting anything done here in order to be able to sell legitimately what potential growth an airline might have here.
Oh, no, absolutely. And don't get me wrong. The air carriers absolutely, to a carrier, absolutely watch all of the economic indicators in Rhode Island and compare that to other places. You know, I mean, I will use very specifically TF Green versus Austin, Texas. We were talking to air carriers just recently about the comparative, you know, the type of growth that's going on in economic prosperity, if I can say that, in Austin versus us. You know, so yeah, you know, they want to go where they see a viable economic future.
All right, in a few seconds or less, summation. Obviously bullish on your business, bullish on the industry. Travel is getting better with the economy, yes?
It is, as the economy improves, travel, but you know, make note, we've got to grind things out. And again, every seat, everything, we're not going to have a home run every day. Every new seat in the green market is an absolute victory. We've got to improve customer service. Our expansion program is essential to us. And again, that doesn't mean the end of things. That means the end of our first round of development. Stage 2 comes after that.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me,
Appreciate
Dan.
it. Final thought, we come back. You know, we're constantly looking for the positive things to talk about in our community. And I will tell you, I think Green Airport is certainly one of them. I don't travel as much as I used to. You know, on the airplane, you know, three, 4, 5 times a year, maybe, depending on the cycle. But it's always refreshing to fly out and to fly back from Green Airport. And we got to constantly remind ourselves of the thumbs up things we have. You can always remind me of it. Thumbs up or thumbs down at your state of mind. Just call me at 228-1886. Leave a voicemail, email, or Facebook post at stateofmind@myridtv.com. You know how to do that. We'll see you on the radio if it's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, noon to 3, and back here same days at 7:30 and 11:30 on MyRI TV. Good night.